And good evening. This is Baltimore's Talk Radio 680 WCBM. I'm Kevin Battle. Thank you for tuning in. Joining us from the American Cornerstone Institute is Dr. Ben Carson. Everybody knows who he is. Retired neurosurgeon, former United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President Trump, a pioneer in the field of neurosurgery. He was a candidate for president as well, 2016. He's an author and a podcaster. The Cornerstone Conversation offers a unique look. It's a series that features high-profile topics and very high-profile influential guests and their viewpoints. The latest that I saw was former coach Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama discussing Title IX and transgender athletes. Good morning, Dr. Carson. Thank you very much for joining us here on WCBM.
Good morning. Delighted to be with you.
Your American Cornerstone Institute focuses on 4 areas, or the cornerstones of the American way, which are now under attack. They are faith, liberty, community, and life, correct?
That's correct. And those things took us from nowhere to the pinnacle of the world in record time. And now we're in the process of pushing them away. We just need to bring back the people's level of consciousness that it was no coincidence that we became a great country. It was because of certain principles and values.
And those values, as you mentioned, are under attack, especially in education. We'll get to that in a moment. But before we get to the state of Baltimore education and public taxpayer-funded education, I'd like your thoughts on the media. We are now in the midst of the Tucker Carlson era, the incident, much speculation about his future and Fox's direction. You have been canceled as well. You've been misquoted. You've been shunned and ignored, etc. And it happened recently for you in your hometown of Detroit. Your name was actually taken off of a school. What kind of effect does that have on you and others? And what is that experience really like?
Well, it's a shame that we've reached a point in our country where we're so intolerant of people with different thoughts and ideas. I always say if 2 people have the same thoughts about everything, one of them isn't necessary. And, this is what we're teaching our children. Where does that lead us as a country in the long run? Now, personally, it doesn't bother me. I kind of expect it because of my Christian faith. And Jesus said, if you follow me, you're going to be persecuted. So I'm only disappointed if I'm not persecuted. But, when I look at, the overall good that's done versus the little things that people can try to pick at you for, I'm grateful for the life that I've had. I was in the airport not long ago in Texas, and a man ran up to me and said, Dr. Carson, you probably don't remember me, but 30 years ago, you operated on my 3-year-old daughter. She had a malignant brain tumor. Everybody said she was going to die. And last week, we celebrated her 33rd birthday. Those are the kinds of things that really buoy you up.
Yes, absolutely. The haters are going to hate, but it's those one-on-one relationships that you have. People see, there's a saying that your hands are all that Christ has on earth, and he's gifted you, and you have gifted other people with extending their lives.
Amen. And that's what life is all about, the good that one can do. Okay. And, that's why I'm a little distressed over, what's going on with our public schools. It's not just Baltimore. It's really all over the country where kids are not learning. People are being dumbed down. And if you know anything about world history, you know that in a lot of places that become Marxists, they dumb down the population first. Mm-hmm. Because people who are not very well versed are easy to manipulate and control.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I went to a public school system, and it was very good, very high quality. And I have some relatives who are teachers who are very adamant about education and very professional about it. But there are, like you said, around the country, a lot of school districts are struggling. Right now, kids are not proficient in a lot of the country in history, civics, math, and reading. And that gets us to Baltimore. 22 schools have 0 students proficient in math and reading in the city of Baltimore. 0 proficient at grade level. Is it time to close shop and give kids just vouchers or VOTEC-only education?
Well, that certainly would tell you that it's a systemic problem. It's not an isolated problem. And I think part of the problem is there's no accountability. The school officials, the teachers, they get paid the same whether the kids pass or not, whether they learn or not. So there's no consequences for this failure. Then we also have an issue with parents who either are working too much to pay attention to their children or aren't actually capable of helping them because they don't understand the material either. So there has to be a seriousness so that parents, teachers, political figures, they all get together and they say, what is the problem? Let's analyze this and let's look at some school districts where this isn't happening. Let's look at some places where they are having success and let's see what they're doing that we're not doing and let's make some changes. That's what serious people would do.
And some of those changes are charter schools. A lot of people get very upset, especially if they're affiliated with a school system, a public school system. They get very upset when there's word of a charter school. They fear that that money will be taken from their budget in the school district and given to the charter school. But that's competition. Wouldn't that keep a school system from getting into the situation that so many are complaining about?
Absolutely. Competition is an incredible motivator to make you do better. You know, it's not that the people in Baltimore are stupid. It's not that the administrators are stupid. They're not incentivized. You incentivize people. It's amazing what they can do. You always hear those stories about the mother whose kid got trapped under a car and they lifted the car up. I mean, you can do amazing things when you're motivated to do it.
And you've done amazing things as well. Your story, your personal story from growing up and the amount of attention your mother gave to education is so admirable. She made sure that you were educated. Are the basic building blocks of our society just crumbled to the point where in certain areas it can't happen because of the familial structure, maybe because of the community trauma, because of drugs or murder in the area? Is that what too many of our teachers are facing every morning when they open up the doors to school? They have to sort of be therapists for the students and provide food and shelter to the kids before the day even starts.
Well, sure, that's a big part of it. I mean, out of 130 million families in the United States, only 23.1 million are traditional nuclear families with a married mother and father and the children. That whole family structure is the basic building block of a society. And when it becomes, destroyed, basically, is what's happening, then you put an extra burden on the teachers because now they've got to be parents as well as teachers. And it's just not working. We need to go back to our roots and say, what worked for us in the beginning? You look at television. What do you see on television now? Nothing but abnormal relationships, hatred, people jumping from bed to bed without even knowing the person. And this is what we're putting in front of our children, bringing drag queens into settings for school children. Are you kidding me? And people can't even see why there's a problem with having, men playing women's sports. What has happened to us? And I talk to a lot of people from foreign countries, and they all have the same question for me. What happened to you guys? Even the French are saying that. We're in trouble now.
Yeah, when the French say it, you're in big trouble because they've led they had the French Revolution that sort of epitomized moving away from traditional values.
Yeah.
You were a cabinet member under the Trump administration. Recently in the Biden administration, Secretary Miguel Cardonas, the education secretary, was on Capitol Hill testifying 2-3 weeks ago. He could not or would not define a woman. He's the Secretary of Education and doesn't know what a woman is. Is it time to just defund the federal Department of Education and just leave it up to the states?
He obviously knows what a woman is, but he has to be politically correct. That's the problem. Political correctness, wokeness, this is antithetical to the First Amendment of the Constitution, freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And people are so frightened now that they may say the wrong thing that they prefer to look ignorant. That's a problem. And, as Ronald Reagan said, we're never more than one generation away from losing our liberty. And, Americans must recognize We have a tremendous country. Despite the fact that people say we're systemically racist and we're horrible and we're unfair to everybody, if we were all that bad, why are all these people trying to get in here? And when they got here, wouldn't they call their relatives and friends and say, don't come here, it's a horrible place? Obviously, that's not the case. We have something that's worth maintaining, but you can't be the land of the free if you're not the home of the brave, if you're not willing to stand up for what you believe in and not be afraid because somebody's going to call you a nasty name or try to cancel you. That's what's going to save our country.
And you are an example of how our country is not systemically racist. You've become very famous, a neurosurgeon, very gifted person, extremely smart, one of the smartest people on our in our country, and you've done very well both politically and professionally.
Yeah, it works the way it's supposed to, because my mother absolutely refused to be a victim and refused to let us be victims. Even though we grew up in desperate poverty, she said the way out, and she knew it because she worked as a domestic cleaning the houses of very successful people, and she looked at what they did. And she said, they don't watch TV all day, and they read, and they study. And she imposed that on us. And we were not happy. In today's world, we would have called social services, but, we had to do it. And, she got a lot of criticism. They said, you can't make boys stay in the house and read books. They'll grow up and hate you. But I think she had the last laugh because one son became a brain surgeon and one became a rocket scientist.
Well, there you go. God bless your mother on a couple days after we celebrated Mother's Day.
Absolutely.
Strong mothers are the core of whether it's your faith, your religious institution, or the country or the world. Strong mothers are really the grease that keeps the wheels going.
Absolutely. And she didn't have much education. She didn't have an advanced degree, although she did get an honorary doctorate degree. But, she loved us. She wanted us to succeed. She had faith in God, and she believed in hard work.
That's the American success right there. That's the recipe for success in America right there.
You got it.
One question I have about school districts and the situation that many of them face, not all, but many of them. Is it a modern-day redlining experience for a lot of neighborhoods? Because kids can't get out. They can't go get that education without the voucher system. They can't go to the neighboring school district that is a much more successful school district. Is it redlining?
Effectively, it is. And vouchers and school choice is absolutely what needs to be done. But, there are things that are available to people. For instance, through our organization, American Cornerstone, our Little Patriots Learning Program, we have a K-5 learning program that teaches the values of America, teaches the real history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We don't shield them from anything. But there's a lot more good than there is bad and ugly. And it's the way you present the material. It's got beautiful cartoons on it. We hired some of the best animators from Disney, Pixar, ones who were not woke, by the way. And you'll really enjoy the stuff. And it's high quality and it's free of charge because we've gotten people across the nation to underwrite the cost because we know how vitally important it is to teach our children at a young age. The communists know, the Marxists know. It was Vladimir Lenin who said, give me your children to teach for 4 years and the seed that I sow will never be uprooted. That's why they're so anxious to get in and to indoctrinate our kids.
Yeah, it starts with the kids. I think all kids want to do the right thing and want to be good and want to learn. They want to please and grow. If you have a good role model or a bad role model, that child is going to emulate that behavior and that mentality. AmericanCornerstone.org is the website for your Little Patriots program.
That's correct. Appreciate that.
Dr. Carson, I mentioned VOTEC earlier. Baltimore has huge sections of boarded-up row houses. You were the HUD secretary. Should the city cede the property to, say, the VOTECs or a few blocks of them to high schools and tell the VOTEC students to take over like a few blocks over the next couple of years of their education and just focus on rebuilding those neighborhoods, and then in the end, their graduation, instead of a diploma or they get the diploma and the keys to that row house or those row houses, and they can start a new community that way. Would that be a good way to teach skills and also provide safe and quality housing for the students and allow them to move forward?
That makes much too much sense. They're not going to do anything that makes that much sense. That politicians do things that benefit them. And what's going to happen is the people of Baltimore are going to have to get serious about who they put in office. Study these people, study their records, see what they have done, because that tells you what they will do. And if you're serious about getting the right people in place, the kind of program that you just mentioned, piece of cake.
Why didn't you ever run for mayor of Baltimore? Because you own this town. When I lived here years ago, I happened to meet you at a radio complex, and every employee there, you were doing a quick public service announcement, and when you left the studio, there were probably 50 people in the hallway waiting to shake your hand.
Well, I really never had a desire for public office. And the only reason I ran for president, after I gave the National Prayer Breakfast speech, there were people who would just rabbit about me running for president. I said, if I ignore these people, it'll go away, but it didn't. I had over 500,000 petitions in my office. And every place I went, people with placards, run, Ben, run. So, that's the only reason that I did it. I don't have any desire now. People keep asking me, are you going to get in there? And I always say, I will always do what the Lord wants me to do, but I hope that's not it.
And you know what? You are very influential in so many other ways, doing radio interviews here in Baltimore. You're going to touch 1 or 2 or 10 or 100 parents tonight. Maybe that'll change the way a child is raised or help focus their educational efforts a little bit better. I wish it could get every kid a voucher. I had Steve Laffey on. He's the former mayor of Cranston, Rhode Island. He's a Republican running for president now. He said that every parent in Baltimore should do their best to get their child out of the city of Baltimore in order to be educated, whether it's a voucher or anything. And he just said that the system is failing everybody. So if one person hears your message and it changes the path or the trajectory of a child's education and future, we did our job tonight.
Absolutely, because that one person will touch other people who will touch other people, and it has a spreading fire effect, and that's very good.
And you are a prime example of that. Dr. Ben Carson, AmericanCornerstone.org. Thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate your time here on WCBM.
Thank you. Thanks for being a patriot.